everyone, and welcome to a new session with Code with Sally. The session run every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. If it's your first time to join us, I would encourage you to go to YouTube, Code with Sally channel. You will find all the recordings for previous sessions and any other recordings I do to answer your questions there. We are in the English session, so you'll find the most used playlists you will be working with will be the beginner if you are just starting and you want to know what is list, what is map, classes, objects, more as beginner topics, you will find it there. And we are currently working with the intermediate series, so you'll find anything related to the intermediate series here in this playlist. If you open it up, you'll find it sorted by the oldest first and the newest towards the end. So if you missed any previous sessions and you want to check either the beginner or intermediate, I encourage you to do that because we always start with basics and we keep adding on top of them. So it's very important to watch the previous sessions if you feel there is need or there is a topic that you need to understand. We have been working with the intermediate series with the asynchronous Apex, and we learned together in 2 sessions the future methods and the importance of them and how to work with it, any limitations. Then we switched to understanding what is an interface and implements that we have been using since then. We did the Qable Apex, and last time we had the first session for Apex Batch. And today we are continuing the Apex Batch classes, and I don't think we'll get the chance to finish everything I want to share or to show to you. So if that's the case, we may have a 3rd session for Apex Batch. And I keep repeating myself there. Apex Batch classes are very important. I've been working and developing since 2010, and since then, almost every project I worked in, they needed in a way or another to implement a batch class. So we are taking our time, we're showing different things and different scenarios and different use cases, because I want to make sure that you understand it very well. It's very important. So today, last time we explained together what is an Apex batch, how to write the syntax, what is the interface we are implementing, which is batchable, and we reviewed quickly what is an interface and why it's important. And we saw how Salesforce divide the records into batches or into chunks, and each of them will have its own execute method. So today it's a continuity to the same topic. We want to start by explaining how we can do unit testing. It's very important to test any code you're writing to make sure it's not it's working as expected, not just for code coverage. Then after that, we will talk about chaining, stateful Apex batch, how to keep the state between one execute to another. And I find this very interesting, and I would love to share my knowledge about that with you. And we'll explain as well what will happen if in one of the batches there is an exception, how this will behave, and hopefully we'll get the chance to start talking about chaining Apex batch job. Anytime anyone has a question, please let me know. It's very important to answer any questions on the go for you if needed. And I will keep an eye on the chat as well to see if there is any questions during the session. So last time we checked together the syntax. So let me refresh your memory about one of the batches, batch class that we created last time. Last time we said we have a scenario where we have created a new opportunity field called business type, and we said we will have old records that doesn't have it because it's just created now. And we said we'll be creating a batch to fill those records. So we talked about the query locator and the start, and we did our SQL statement that will return here. Then we discussed how we'll divide it into chunks, and we saw in the execute how we are updating the opportunities for this chunk and calling update. And we explain the problem with update, that if one of them will fail, everything will fail. And we said like you can do the database.update instead. And I left you this code on GitHub. So now we want to test this batch class. So what we will be using, like, is it totally different than the concept of testing? No, like we'll follow the same pattern. We always say like in our test method, we like to prepare our data, whether it's in setup data or in a factory class or within your test method. But like you have to prepare the data that you will be running your code with against your methods. And then you run the methods that you want to test. And then you do your asserts to make sure that the code got executed the right way. But as any like asynchronous Apex, we saw that with Qubel, we saw that with future method. It's very important to use this test.start test and stop test. We saw another use case why it's very important to use them to have a fresh limits for the code you are trying to test, and that will avoid hitting any governor limits without like really hitting them within your code, but because you're preparing a lot of data before running your code. So we saw that when we were talking about test classes, but again, we saw the start test and stop test and their importance when we were working with future and Qubel because it's asynchronous. Asynchronous, if you remember, we said like that means we put the queue in the queue that we want to run this batch, but we don't know when it will be executed. It will run, or the code for it will be executed whenever Salesforce finds the resources are available and pick this batch or Apex class to run. So you cannot guarantee when it will be done to do your asserts. And that's why the start and stop test is important, because when you start and stop test, it get executed, that enforces Salesforce that by running stop test that your batch is executed. So it's not totally random. It's forced to be executed by that time. So after the stop test, we'll be doing our asserts, and we used to do that as well, like when we were working with the future and Qubel. So let's try it again today together with the batch class. So I prepared here a class. It's a preference. I usually name my test classes the same name of the class I'm trying to test, and I ended with a test. We have isTest to mark it as testing class, and we have a method. I have here the pattern that we want to work with because we don't rely, and the test classes doesn't see the records we have in our org. So what we will do is, first step is prepare the data. So for preparing the data, I can have here like a list of opportunity. We want to have a list of opportunity created with business type active, because when we want the batch to be executed, we want them to be retrieved. So you have to keep in mind when working with batches, batch Apex, that if you prepare your data, you want to prepare the data in a format that when the query would run, they can be fetched. Like I don't go and create my opportunity with a business type legacy as a default value, for example, because if I do that, then when the query will run, we'll have 0 records. So always make sure that you are creating your data the way you want. So I will grab my code here. All we need to do is to have a, let's say, a for loop. I will create 200 opportunity. I will give it a name. I set the stage close date, but I didn't set the business type. So the business type will be null for them. So that's creating the data. When I want to run my batch, what do we do? Or the code that we want to run? We said we run our code by doing executeBatch. So I do here Database.ExecuteBatch. We tried running this code in developer console. And if you remember, we said like we give an instance of the class. So I have the instance with the same name of my batch class that I want to run here. And finally, after if the execute batch and the batch runs successfully and it finds my records, I should be able to fetch the opportunities again and compare that the business type is not empty anymore and that it's the default value legacy. So I will do that now in my assert section. In my assert section, I will do if a so-called statement to get me the same opportunities. I'm interested to check their business type. I don't need to get their IDs. And I can loop through them one by one and check if like the business type is correct or not. And also I will put this for you. Some people still use system.assert, but it's better and it's recommended by Salesforce now that you add like use the assert.requal instead, because it has more functions and more clear functions, the naming of them and their behavior is not confusing. You can double check as well on that. On the session we did for the unit testing, we discussed and compared the two together. So let's save this now. I would do here, I'm missing a semicolon at the end, and I will try to deploy. So until now, it seems like the regular way to do test classes. We prepare the data, we executed the code that we want to test, and we did our assert. But if I run it, it will fail. And the reason is when we do the execute batch, we don't know when it will be executed. So when you try to retrieve the opportunities, it doesn't necessarily mean that the batch got executed and the values won't be like updated. The legacy or the business type will be empty. And let's add here as well, business type value should be the default legacy. Like to give more an explanation if that fails, what happened wrong. I will save this quickly and we'll try to run it again. I want to show you first the error and how it will fail, and then we'll fix it and see it working with no issues. So the prepare data, as I mentioned before, like you can have the setup data and we saw together how it works. And the best is to have whether to call from the setup data or from your method here to call your test data factory. And the reason why, because we don't want to keep repeating the code over and over again. Let me try to run the test now to show you that it's gonna fail. Okay, so let's see the error here. Hopefully. Okay, so the assertion failed because it says like the value should be default legacy. The expected is legacy, but the actual is null. And that's because we didn't enforce the backfill opportunity to run. So to fix that, we have to wrap our code that we are trying to test with test.startTest and stop test as well. So with the start and stop test, we are letting Salesforce know that we wanted to be executed on the spot. And like by stop test, we are sure 100% the backfill method got executed. So let's deploy it and try it again. That time it should succeed because we enforce it to run. So the backfill will be called, the like we'll find the records, Salesforce will divide it into chunks, and then we'll update the value to legacy. So let's run it this time. And let's see it from here easier. Okay. You will find that it got executed correctly and it passed. So it got ran successfully and the assert happened and we found all the opportunities with business type now legacy. So that's the main thing that I wanted to show you. you have to think about it the same way as any normal unit test. You have to prepare the data, run the code, and do the assert. While running the code, remember to have the start and stop test. Something interesting, and I want to show it to you. We know that the batch class is supposed to be working with a lot of records. And sometimes people will say, okay, I will go and create 2,000 opportunities. Let me show you an error. The maximum you can work with is 200. Like you cannot exceed the 200 records when working with the Apex batch in unit testing. So let's see it here. And that's a limitation from Salesforce. We cannot get around it. It will give me an error when I run it with more than 200 records. So let's find it here. Hopefully it doesn't take long. I have for backup, like what's the error message? I have it for you here if it takes for long as well to run, but let me put it for you. Okay, it finished. So let me show you the error. The error here, it will say that you cannot have more than one execute batch call from a test method. And please make sure iterable return and the batch size, like it will limit for you how many execute. Like the execute, it has to be only one. So you cannot have more than 200. It gives you an expected exception. No more than one executable batch can be called for within the test method. Please make sure iterable return from your start method matches the batch size, resulting in one execute. And like when we try to execute here, we didn't specify the batch size. Like here, we said when we execute a batch, we can not specify the batch size, and Salesforce will work by default as 200. So that's why when we had here 200, it was working because Salesforce will create 200 records. The 200 records will be retrieved and no issues. If someone do this like 50 and you specify, okay, I created 200, that's the maximum, but it's not just 200 as a number. You need to have only one execute, like when the batch will take the records returned from the start method and split it, we need to have only one group. So in that case, we have 200 records in total. If you split it, it will be split by 50. So that means we have more than one. If I try now to execute the task class, it should fail and give me the same error message that I can have only execute batch once, unless I remove the 50 and I work with the 200. So just I want to show it to you so you understand it and keep an eye on it. Let's see. Don't know. Sometimes like the test classes run very fast for me, and sometimes it takes a bit of time. So hopefully it's not taking super long for you as well. But it's important to see this error before moving on. Let's see if it's done. It's still running. Okay, so here it failed. Like when we executed this with 50, even though I have 200, it failed now, even though it was working before. And the reason why, because it's failing, it's saying like I have to have one execute batch only. And what happens here when we have a size of 50, the records that will be coming back when the test class will run will be 200. And then it will have 4 chunks. And it will have each of the chunks with 50. So the first one will have the first 50, the second one, second 50, third 50, and the fourth 50 as well. So that means in real life, if it's not a test class, the execute will run 4 times. And that's what Salesforce is limiting in the test classes. You need to have the execute like implemented or run only once. So you have to be mindful. If you want to test it with passing a parameter like what we have here, you have to have this matching the size. Like if you are passing size 50, the number of records that you are creating or preparing to be returned by the start method should match the count or the number you are passing here. If you're not passing any parameters, so you have up to 200 records. It's very important because some people like feel happy, let's create 1,000 record and try to run the batch. It won't work and it will give you the exception we saw together. Test classes are important always, and it's very good to keep an eye on them and to try to cover a lot of scenarios and to understand how they are working. And that's why, like, whenever we take a new type of test of asynchronous or different style of coding, I try to keep an eye that I teach as well along, like how to write the test class. So here, to summarize, start and stop test is your friend. Your asserts will be after the stop test. And the most important thing, to keep an eye on the number of records you are preparing that will return from the start. If you're not passing any parameter to be 200 maximum, if you're passing here batch size, it has to be maximum this integer value you're passing. So otherwise you'll get the error that you cannot have more than one execute. Okay. We are talking about test classes, and we saw like example for the like batch, how to write it. Something very important I want to show it to you is what will happen if one batch like fails. So for example, I have here another batch that I prepared for you. Let me open it bigger, make this smaller. And I did like implement the batchable. I'm returning here. I'm creating like returning the opportunities with the name Demo Sally. It starts like with Demo Sally and it can end with anything. And at, for example, record 150, I will throw an exception. There is no exception, and I could like finish everything and do update the stage for them to be close one. I'm doing this on purpose just to simulate that there is an exception that will happen on the fly for you, and then the finish. So without this, it's a normal batch that we created to return the opportunities we are interested in. We are updating the stage, and finish, we are just logging a message. The only thing we did different here, that I did just a condition to check if the name of the opportunity has demo Sally 150. I will throw an exception to show you on purpose what will happen. Now, if my code will return, for example, here, 200 records, and I will run it with batches like 50s. That means we'll have 4 batches or 4 chunks of code like that will be executed. Here, let's name it batch or chunk. Some people name it like that, and some people refer it to chunk, but the most popular is batch. So here I will have the error will be in which batch. First 50, no. Second, no. It will be most probably on the third, because we can order by name as well. By name essay. So to make sure, like if I have demo Sally 1, 2, 3, they are sorted. So here, the exception will happen here. So the question is, do you think batch 1 and 2 will be rolled back or they will be updated? Do you think this will be updated or none of the records here will be updated? And finally, do you think batch 4 will be executed, like the execute method for batch 4 will be executed or no? Any guesses from everyone here? Like, what do you expect the behavior will be?
I think if it fails, I think they won't process.
None of them. That's your
No.
guess, right? Okay. Any other guesses? Batch 4 will be executed. There is a guess that batch 4 will be executed and that only batch 3 will be skipped. So we have a guess that said like everything will be failing. A guess was like 1, 2 will succeed, 3 will be skipped, and 4 will be executed. Why the batch is on, there is a question in the chat saying why the error will be on the third batch. I'm assuming that I pass size batch equal 50. So if I don't pass a batch size, the Salesforce will assume we are running it or will divide it each 200 together. But if I pass a batch size like 50, that means Salesforce has to work with my batch size. So if I have 200 records coming back, they will be divided into 4 batches, each 50 together. And we order them by name ascending to make sure, like if we are creating, I will be creating with you now opportunities named Demo Sally 1, 2, 3 until 200 to see what will happen. So we have 2 guesses. One guess is everything will fail. Second guess is that 1, 2, and 4 will be successful, but batch 3 will fail. So let's try together. Let's go to developer console. And because I'm a developer org, I will delete all the opportunities I have in the org because I don't have enough storage. And we'll be creating the one we are interested in. So I will create now the opportunities that we want to work with. So I will have here a list of opportunities. Let's make it 200 as our example. I will have here, let's see, I was looking for Demo Sally, so I will name it Demo Sally, and then the stage will be prospecting and the close date in 10 days, and I will insert opportunities. So I'll be creating 200 opportunities. Let's execute it. Now we got created the opportunities. So I can see here, let's refresh this. And I put here stage name. Okay, so I have here, and let's do it as well. Order by name ascending to match what we have. Okay. So it's sorted here. We want them 0, 1, 2, 3. But because like you will find demo 1 towards the end because it's comparing or sorting them as not number as string. So it doesn't see it as 0, 1, 2, 3. So again, like that's fine. It's good for us, enough for us. Let's see, like here, the 150 will be somewhere here. So it can be, it depends, like I didn't count them, but it will see how many, there will be at least 50 in a batch with the 150. So we'll have it here open with us and we'll look into it. Okay. And if I don't do that, order by, let's see if we can get it here, created date, I think all. So because all at the same time. Okay, so it doesn't matter. We'll have it that way and we'll see it together. Okay, so we have this batch. I have to execute it and see how it will behave. So let's take, let me save it here, deploy to make sure we have everything we want. And I will call it from the developer console. Here, I will execute it. So we'll have here database. And I will have here failing batch demo. So the one that is failing now, the batch, the new batch that has the failing one batch in it will be executed. And if you remember, we said like we can keep an eye on this with the setup here, Apex jobs, and we can look into it. So I will have it here open, but before forgetting, I pass here parameter 50 because otherwise it will be only one batch because they are 200 records. So now when I will pass the batch size is 50, we'll have 4 of them. So let's execute. And I will go here and I will see what will happen. So here we have total batches 8. Okay. Okay. The reason why is I had other data in the org. When we deleted, I had just the stage 1, so it had more records. But that means I have here 8 batches because it got more records. I expected only 4, but it divided into 50, so we had more records. And we have here 800 records as well. So that's why we have batches, more batches than we expected. And let me get here and let's refresh. So what will happen is it didn't fail all of them. You will see that only one batch failed and it's chunk number 4. I have here in my class, I was telling you, okay, it's not batch number 4, it just because I have hard-coded this here. But again, it's showing you that only one batch failed, everything else succeeded. So if I go here and I do run the same query, okay, I want to get the same query we have here. So select ID, and I will run it here, like demo Sally, to be matching. I'm getting everything else. Okay, so we have here 400 matching the criteria. We were getting everything else. So we had other names. We don't want them. I want only the ones that start with demo Sally. So we have 400 records. It's more than what we wanted because we deleted less than what we wanted. And we split them into 50 records at a time. So that's why we have 8 batches. And let's add here the stage name. You will find that we should see it's closed one for almost all of them, except some of them is still prospecting. If I say here and stage name equal prospecting, they should be 50 because the batch size I have is 50. See, here we have 50 records. So 50 records failed to be updated because we are updating the scope as a whole and we have an exception. So it's unhandled. And then this whole batch had unhandled exception and it got ignored. So what happened here is that only one batch of the 8 got ignored. They didn't get updated. And the rest of them, they got updated successfully. And the reason is because each execute, if you remember when we explained it together, each execute is considered to run on its own transaction, its own limits. So even if one of them had an unhandled exception, it doesn't fail all the other batches. Only the batch, this batch only will fail. And that's why, like, if we assume we had 4, we'll find that 1, 2, and 4, like the answer we got in the chat, that 1, 2, and 4 will be successful. Only one batch of them, we assumed here it will be batch 3, will be skipped. So this one error will be skipped and the rest will be successful, no issues. And that's what we happened here. We had 400 records, 350 got updated to closed one with no issues, and only 50 records, and that's the batch size, got skipped and they were not updating, and their status remains, stage name remained prospective. So that's very important to know and to understand, because it's very important to understand that it's a great idea to have try and catch, or to have like to save as much records as you can in one execute if you can, with a try and catch or logic there. And it's very important to know, even if like you have 10 batches, 8 batches, one of them has unhandled exception, the only one that will be failed and will be skipped, and the rest will be successful. So that's what we are talking here. And we said like each execute, chunk, or like batch will run in a separate transaction with separate limits, as we agreed. Previous chunks will not be rolled back, and we saw that together. And the failing chunk or the failing batch will be skipped, and we can see that in like async Apex job if we write a SOAP query for it, or even we are seeing here in the UI that we have 8, 7 processed, and 1 got skipped because it has a failure. So that's something. The previous ones won't be rolled back, will be successful. The one with the error will be skipped, and the later chunks and later batches will be executed with no issues. And it's always advisable to have like a try and catch in your code, like we don't have here in this example, a try and catch, but it's advisable to have a try and catch to make sure as much as you can, you are not like causing a whole batch to fail. Like best is not to use update, and we saw last time we discussed like it's better to have database.update with all and none false, unless you want to fail the whole batch together. It's up to you, but it's recommended to have a try and catch, and it's very important to understand the behavior that you may face if you have an exception the same way we have. The next example that we want to discuss is how we can preserve state across batch Apex execution. And let me show you an example first before talking how to do it. We'll see first together like what's the issue or what we are trying to achieve, and we'll see how we can fix it. So the story around this, like sometimes like you have the update and you don't know, like you want to get like the opportunities with business type null, but when you try to update, you don't know actually how many succeeded or not, especially if we are using the database dot update, true or not, or even you don't know like if there is one failure in one of the batches. And sometimes you want to get like roll-up summary, like what's the total amount for those opportunities we got updated, like we are closing them to close one and we want a grand total for all of them. Like some scenarios you want to do that. So what we did here is that we had a stateful opportunity batch. I gave it that name just to be distinguished, and we implemented the interface. And because we implemented the interface, we have a start, execute, and finish. The start, we have the database.get query to return the records. The execute will do the logic to update the business type to legacy. And we are updating what's new here. We created a private integer to keep account of the records we updated. And we are updating the records. We can make it more complex to have database.update, but I'm just trying to keep it simple to focus on the database, like how to make it sense the state of the variables between the executions. And then we'll write this at the end. Let's save it. And I want to run this query before going and checking. And I will do that. Here, we have 600 records. So we have 600 records of opportunity where the business type is null. We are expecting the log after we run the batch to give us like the total number of opportunities that we updated is 600. But for now, to save time, I will say here, limit to 100. So we update only 100 of our opportunities to keep the 500 to when we do the fix. So when we run this, I'm expecting the update count to be 100 now, because I will update only 100 of the 600s we have. So let's take this name here, and I will go here to the log, and I will clear it, and I go to my developer console, and I will execute batch and give it the name here of the batch we are trying to update. And let's keep it even with the 50. That means I have 2 batches, and I will execute. So here, if I refresh, I have here 2 batches. They got processed, no failures. So that means it got successful. And when I run here my query, it will be 500 records instead of 600 because we updated only 100 of them. And if I open like the debug log, you will find that it's telling me the total opportunities updated is 0. But this is not what I expect. I expected to get 100 because I updated 100 records. Why this is happening? It's happening because between the execution, like the update count, I initiated this by 0. So now I see the value for it as 0. I go to the first batch, it will be 50 because we have 100 and we'll split it into 2. It will be updated to 50. But once the execute is done, the update count will return to 0 because it cannot see the values between one execute and the other one. So the update 0, the update count is initially 0. That's what we will start with. And after first execute, it should be 50, but it will remain 0 because it will reset again before running the second execute. So after second execute, it should be 50 if we are setting it reset, or we expected it to be 100, but it will remain 0 because after the second execute is done, the update count, I don't see the value for it. It will return as if it's 0. So when we go to update count and print it here, it will see that the value for it is 0. Okay. And it's the value that we initiated with. Let's say I initiated this with 1,000, and let's try to run it. The update count will be 1,000 here. I'm expecting here to be 1,050 and 1,100, but it will remain as 1,000 because that's the value that we can see between the batch execution. We cannot keep adding to it between the executions. So if I try to execute it now, I will see in here, I will see that it updated 1,000. So 1,000 is just the initial value that we'll put it with. So regardless what's the initial value is put in your variable, it will remain the one that you can see in the finish or between the execution, it will be the value for it. Okay, so the reason sometimes, as I said, you want to keep it in count because you are sending an email and you want to say we updated 100 records or 200 records or 10 million records. And sometimes you want to say, okay, we updated 10,000 records successfully and 200 failed, because you can have here the update database.update, and you can like behave differently if it's successful or failure. Like you can have 2 counts, or you can have a total, like total amount at the end. So sometimes there is need to be able to track what's happening, or to have counter order, like sum or total somewhere between the one execution and the other. So in order to do that, there is a special type of interface that we can add. It's called Database.Stateful. And even though we say it's an interface, it doesn't request that it's to add any method to it. It's an indicator that tells Salesforce, hey, by the way, now, if you have any counts, any values that you want like to keep track between execution, that's allowed, because we want it to keep the state from one execution to another. So what will happen now that the update count is 0. After the first execution, it will be 50 and it will remain 50. And what will happen is that after the second execution, the count will change to 100 and it will remain 100. So when we print here in the final, we will update the 100. And let's remove the 100 as well and see how many records we have. We executed twice. So we are talking about, okay, 400. So if I, like this one will be at the end, I'm expecting here to print 400. And that's because we will have multiple batches, different, like 400 divided by 50. That means more batches. It's not just 200 like 2. And it will keep increasing the value of the update count, and it doesn't reset between one and the next execution. So I'm expecting when it tells me how many got updated to see the 400 now correctly. So let's go and try to execute it. I will open execute anonymous and I will clear the logs and let's run it. Now, if I refresh to see it, I will see that we have 8 batches, 8 processed, 0 failures. So if I go here to the batch apex, and I will see now that the count could sense that we have 400 as expected, and it's not resetting to the 0 as we used to see without having database.stateful. So database.stateful does the magic for you to keep values between execution to another. And it's very important like to remember that. Because sometimes people do logic like this to calculate counts, to calculate rollup values, and they forget to have database.stateful. And unfortunately, like when they want to do something with those numbers, the number is wrong and it's not correct, and they don't know why, because it doesn't give you an error. Like it's not throwing an exception that you have to know or remember database.stateful. So you may spend some time figuring out what happened. I had this question for you, like if we want to preserve the state across batch apex execution, which means the multiple execution we have when Salesforce divide the records into batches or chunks for you. So the instance variables reset between execute chunk, and we saw, and chunk is batch, so between each batch and each execution, the update will reset to the default value. So we saw it when it was 1000, it was 1000. When I set it by default to 0, it's the 0. Here you can use database.stateful to preserve data across chunks. And it's a special type of like interface. And it can help like preserving the values across different execution. It's perfect for counters like the one we did in our example. You can use it to do aggregate values, give summary at the end, like this is the number of records we were able to update. Those are the numbers of records we failed to update. Like it can help you have a summary or a counter if needed. If the requirements doesn't have anything to use it, like don't go ahead and add it. Like just use it when you want to keep track of counts or aggregates between the executions. So the way we do it is we added the implements database.stateful, and we added this by having a comma here and Database.Stateful towards that. This will conclude what we wanted. Like, I wish to have time to move to training batch jobs in Apex as well. But we are running out of time today. So I hope it was useful. We covered what happens if there is an exception. We covered the preserve the state between batch execution, and we covered how to write the test classes. I encourage you to try them out, play with what we learned together in the session. And next time, we'll start with training batch jobs, how we can make callouts from batch jobs. And we'll see. I'm still evaluating if we'll talk about iterable as a return type for the start method or not. And then we'll finish with a comparison between future method, queuable, and Apex batch. And I will offer for you some like code snippets you can reuse across different projects for your queuable method, queuable Apex and batch Apex as well. If you wanted to have it handy and like as a template to start using for different projects. I hope this session was useful. If you have a question, please send it to me on LinkedIn or Slack for Code with Sally, and I will do my best to cover it either before next session or I will cover it with the next session we have. And I hope you learned something new, and I will see you next Thursday.